foresee the day where AI becomes so good at making a deep fake that the people who believed fake news as true will no longer think their fake news is true. Because they'll think their fake news was faked by AI. The day that happens, the entire role of the internet as a source of objectively true information will implode. And that will be the death of the internet as that source. Like 1992 to 2028, whatever. Rest in peace. And the internet will return to just cat videos and other... Remember when we just would entertain each other with videos? The internet will return, because AI will be so good at faking news. I don't know how to quantify it just yet, but imagine that's a quantifiable entity. The prevalence of life that we presume to be out there, the stock in the prevalence of life has gone up in the past 10 or 15 years.
Why?
Because, for me, the best argument for upping that stock value is the following. I don't know the age of everyone in the audience, but I would bet that when you took biology class and you learned the age of the Earth 4.5 billion years ago, and then you look at the earliest evidence for life, fossil evidence of life on Earth, then you get about 3.5 billion years. Subtract those two numbers, get the difference between those two numbers, and that's the time clock from beginning to the first evidence for life, okay? That was about 1 billion years out of the 4.5 billion years that Earth has been here. So that's pretty quick. It happened in like the first 20% of the life of the planet.
And the first 20% was pretty rough. There was a...
Wait, no, hold on. Since the time we all took biology, we have found fossil evidence of life farther back in time than 3.5 billion years. It now goes back to 3.8. There's some evidence it might even reach 3.9. So we have shrunken the time available for life to have formed on this Earth. That makes it more likely. If the faster life kicks in from a pool of just random chemicals, not random, they're the chemicals of the universe, the faster that happens, the more confidence I have that life is something that would happen just given the right soup and soup starter, okay? Now, we then learned when computers got good, better than they once were when we were in school as kids, the early solar system didn't just simply make the sun and the planets. There was debris all scattered in interplanetary space. And that debris slowly got vacuumed up by the gravity of the respective planets. That would not have been a pleasant occasion on the surface of those planets, because to vacuum it up simply means you're getting slammed by the kind of asteroid that took out the dinosaurs, except you're getting that monthly. And you can calculate what the temperature of Earth's surface would have been. And it would have been higher than what would allow complex molecules to form, because at high temperatures you break apart molecules. So, what our computer models show is that this period of bombardment, period of heavy bombardment is the official phrasing, lasted 600 million years. So it's not fair to start the life clock at 4.5 billion years ago, because life had no chance of forming when the surface of the Earth is molten. Wait for things to cool down. When there's a chance that carbon can run its magic, then you start the clock. Now you're going from 4 billion years ago into 3.8 billion years. And you have pinched the time it takes to start life down to 200 million years, down from 1 billion years that was imagined just a generation ago. And that is further evidence. Practically the earliest life could have formed, it did. I watched the Thor movie, and I'm saying, how much does that hammer weigh? And I heard a sentence in the movie that enabled me to calculate how much his hammer weighed. They say, hammer forged in the heart of a dying star? Oh my gosh, I'm an astrophysicist. We deal in dying stars. I got this. Hide some dense stuff going on in a dying star. Damn. I filled out the density, and I tweeted it, and I said, if Thor's hammer is made in the way the movie says, it has the weight of a herd of 300 million elephants. That's why nobody could pick it up. The Hulk couldn't pick it up. You need the magical powers of Thor to do it. And then I got out nerded. Somebody said, Dr. Tyson is wrong about this calculation, okay? Yeah. So, yeah, I got totally smoked on this one. So what happened was, in 1991, Marvel issued a Thor's Hammer trading card, where they said Thor's hammer is made of a fictional material, Uru, and it weighs precisely 42.3 pounds.
Who do you think is the most extraordinary scientific mind that that humanity has produced?
There is no contest. Isaac Newton. Nobody comes close.
Explain why.
He, working alone, discovers the laws of motion. Then he discovers the law of gravity, universal law of gravitation. Oh, and then someone asked, why do your planets orbit in this shape, ellipses, the ovals, rather than perfect circle? I said, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And he goes home, and he comes back, I finally have my answer. And they said, well, Isaac, how did you do that? Well, I had to invent integral and differential calculus to answer that question. He then discovers the laws of optics, deducing that white light is composed of colors, because you could take those same colors, recombine them, and get white light, which freaked out artists of the day. He does all of this. Then he turns 20. So what they decided to do is for people who are about to die, they would write a message facing upwards to the ceiling above the bed and suspend it there. So if a person goes above their bed and looks down, they'd be able to read the message. So when they rejoin their body, they should then tell us what message they saw. That's never happened. It's just... Now, I have a cousin who, when her father died, was alone with him in the room, and he's in an open casket. And she's otherwise completely rational, okay? I'm not saying this is a crazy person. She's a real estate agent. She tells me of a conversation she had with her dead father. And I said, was it in your mind? No, he sat up and spoke to her. I said, what was the conversation? And she said, well, he said, don't worry about him. He's in a better place, this sort of thing. So this is her eyewitness testimony. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not scientifically useful. I told her, next time this happens, ask these questions and not those questions, okay? Don't say, are you happy? No, saying, are you wearing clothes? Where are you? Where did you get your clothes? What temperature is it? Just ask questions. Like, this is an amazing scientific experiment you could be performing. That's my lesson to all of you. Okay, generally today we'll say, if you are of Venus, you are Venusian. And if you're Mars, you're Martian. And if you're Earth, you're Earthling. This is sort of thing.
Earthling is ours?
You didn't know that?
No, that sucks compared to other
It's not
ones.
as fun.
It's not as fun.
We're not Earthians or something. Yeah. So we have Martians and Venusians, but Venusian is the improper word.
Really? Okay.
The proper word, if you are of Venus, is venereal.
Venereal.
Yes, and doctors got to that.
Like the disease?
Doctors got to that word before the astrophysicists did. So they found a class of diseases that are common to lovemaking, because Venus is the goddess of love and beauty and all that goes with it. So they call that that entire class of diseases venereal diseases. So in fact, the Russian landers on Venus, they're called Venera. Venera 1, Venera 2. So the Venera root exists elsewhere, but we wouldn't touch it. So we say Venusian just to cover, just to sweep that under the rug. Then, in the 1990s, we discovered icy bodies in the outer solar system that rivaled Pluto in size. And we found many of them. And so what we concluded was Pluto wasn't so much the 9th planet. It was one of the largest of the icy bodies of a new swath of real estate that we added to our understanding of the solar system, called the Kuiper Belt of comets.
If we left right now, it would take us 9 months to get to Mars?
No, you can't leave right now. You have to leave when Mars and Earth are properly aligned. So just to remind people, if you see Mars in the sky and you start traveling to it, no, you have to travel to where Mars will be when you get there. So it's a matching of trajectories that matters here. So what we call the minimum energy trajectory. So it's one where you burn your engines and then you shut them off, then you coast to Mars until Mars pulls you into its gravitational influence, and then you fall towards Mars. That takes about 9 months. But if you run your engines the whole time, which we can't do yet because we don't know how, because we don't have enough fuel, if we had filling stations along the way, you could do this. If you do that, you get to Mars in weeks, a few weeks. But it'll take a boatload of fuel to do that.
So who knew the moon was that large? This is Mars.
Sure, that could be Mars, yeah.
It could be Mars 10 inches?
Oh, yeah, that's
10
right.
inches, is
That's
that
about right,
Oh,
sure.
We're going to do an experiment of how far, to this scale, if we're according to this scale, how far away the moon might be.
Oh, sure, okay, so
let's
I'll give you the moon.
send
Here,
somebody
come here. Stand right here. Okay, you now have the moon. Put it where the moon is, relative. Earth is the
Where do you
size.
think it is?
Right there.
Right about there? That's about the right distance?
Given that this is 20 inches and this is 5, you think the moon is
Right about there. Okay.
Okay.
That is way off. Okay. Just start backing up.
Yeah, and
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
turn around while you're going.
Keep going. That's about right. Yeah. That's about the Earth-Moon distance. Yeah. You know why? You've been lied to by textbooks that have to squeeze them both into the same page.
And then the positioning of Mars.
Oh yeah, okay. So, well, you know it's got to be farther than the moon. I'm going to really save you this effort here. It'll be like a mile and a half away, which is farther away than Town Lake.
So
I didn't know at that time. He's not a household name. People, Twitter fans might know him. Abyss Stone was his name. But one of the things he said is Twitter enables humans to flock. And I said, what? What do you mean? Well, birds are individual while they're pecking away. Then something happens, and then they all do this.
Yeah.
And then when they figure out they're done, then they come back and they're individuals again. Twitter can garner people's behavior, thoughts into one coherent action, and then you release it, and you're back being your individual self. I grew up in New York City. Every night, the evening news would lead off with a fire in some home.
Usually it's a space heater, those little space heaters.
No, back then people smoked in bed.
Oh.
Okay,
Damn, boy.
and it was before.
That's crazy.
And it was before.
It's fun to do, but
smoke alarms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh.
The point is, I was certain I would die in a fire.
Damn.
I would never live to adulthood because I saw that every single day. And so now there are fewer fires because we have smoke. Yeah, there's a few and they make big news, but the rate compared back then, New York has fewer firehouses. We've been closing firehouses.
Well,
you
boring.
just don't need them. And by the way, what really saved things are smoke detectors because before smoke detectors, you had to buy flame retardant things in your home. You know what an egg is?
A cell.
No, I was going to be more metaphorical.
Oh, what's an egg? What's an egg?
This is not a biology class here.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you know what an egg? An egg is a spacesuit for the unborn organism so it can survive in an environment that would otherwise kill it.
Yeah, it is.
Until it can survive, then it no longer needs the spacesuit.
That's true.
Think about that.
I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Right?
No?
So the chicken is inside the egg because the outer environment can't live in that environment. So it stays in there until it's ready. Then it pops out and it can
lead the ship.
Lead the ship. Continental drift. This is a fascinating bit of history here. There's someone who looked at the shape of South America and the shape of Africa on a map.
Yeah.
And said, wait, that looks like it fits, but there's a whole ocean between them. But it kind of, is there a puzzle? Did these land masses once connect? Let's test this. Well, what might you do? You say, if they once connected, might there be fossils in common on both shores, even though there's an ocean between them? So you look, the fossils match. Oh my gosh. And other things start matching, but wait a minute. How the hell is land gonna move on a solid surface? No one had any idea about this. No understanding. That notion that a continent would move when no one had a mechanism to make it happen, it just sort of stayed there on the shelf. The consensus was not ready to go there.
Right.
And so what happens after the Second World War? We're mapping the bottom of the Atlantic so the subs know where to hide and where to go, the submarines. And in the center of the Atlantic, there's a ridge. Oh my gosh, there's a split. It's separating in the middle of the Atlantic. Once that was uncovered and revealed, declassified and published, boom, we had the mechanism and all the data fit.
Was Galileo treated as a kind of a devil, in a sense?
The simple story is he makes these discoveries. They conflict with the teachings of the Catholic Church. They put him on trial. They find him guilty of saying that Earth goes around the sun and not vice versa. And then they put him under house arrest. What they don't tell you, or they would tell you if you read a longer biography about him, is that he actually made fun of the Pope, public fun of the Pope. He wrote a book in Italian, not in Latin, which is the academic language of the day, in Italian, which means the local people can read it. And in it, he invents a conversation between a simpleton and someone who is wise of the ways of the universe. And if you track the statements of the simpleton, they're all statements that have come by official decree from the Catholic Church. So he's really a pompous a-hole, basically.
Okay, I want to talk a lot about like the chicken or the egg debate.
People are still debating that?
They are.
It's not a debate.
That's what I think too.
No, it's not a debate. It's very clear and simple. The egg came first. It was just laid by a bird that was not a chicken. There is a bird that you perhaps would not call a chicken.
Yeah, proto-chicken.
Yeah, proto-chicken, sure. Yeah. And then there's a genetic
alteration, which occurs in every generation.
Right.
Very tiny genetic variations. And the egg that comes out of it, you would say, that's not a proto-chicken, that's a chicken.
Turns out hydrogen sulfide is extremely lethal, is one of the most lethal gases that exists. Well, why do we have such a good sense of smell for that? Why don't we smell other gas? Why don't we smell nitrogen? Well, we don't need to smell nitrogen because it's not going to kill us, because it's 78% of what you breathe anyway. We have evolved a hypersensitive sense for the smell of hydrogen sulfide. If you gave birth to someone who said hydrogen sulfide smells beautiful and let's smell more of it, let's get canisters of it, they're dead 10 minutes later, no longer able to propagate the gene that liked the smell of hydrogen sulfide. It has been theorized that there have been places and times on Earth where the ocean currents stopped. And when ocean currents stop, oxygen at the surface of the ocean never makes it to the bottom. So you can't sustain oxygen life forms at the bottom of the ocean. There are no fish. There wouldn't be any fishes down there if the ocean currents stopped. Because the ocean currents not only go from one place to another in the world, they circulate top to bottom, right? So it's a two-dimensional thing going on, 3 dimensions actually. So if something happens on Earth where you stop the oceanic cycles, you can create a condition in the lower ocean where anaerobic life forms thrive. And if they thrive, they outgas. And one of their outgases is hydrogen sulfide. It will gurgle up from the bottom of the ocean, rise up near the shores, turning shorelines into the smell of cesspools. If you were alive at the time and didn't run away from that, you would have simply died from it.
I wonder if we are smart enough to actually figure out the universe. Because we define ourselves as intelligent, well, because we came up with the test for that, right? If we give the test to the worm, no, that failed it. Okay, the butterfly, no. The gorilla, no, can't do long division. And so we are intelligent, we tell ourselves. But by our own measures are we intelligent, but not by from some measure outside of ourselves. Suppose there were aliens who had the same genetic difference from us that we have from chimps, but in the intelligence scale. And what's the smartest thing a chimp has ever done? Maybe combine some rudimentary hand gestures, let's stack some boxes and reach a banana, do some finger painting. Our toddlers do that. So get that next species that we've never met, where they are to us what we are to chimps, or rather chimps are to us what we are to them. Then the smartest among us in their world would be like little Timmy coming home from grade school. Okay, they can roll Stephen Hawking forward and say, this one is slightly smarter than the rest of those humans because he can do astrophysics calculations in his head like little Timmy over here. But put his latest equations up on the refrigerator. Isn't that cute?
You go back, 300-400 years, if you fell on the ground, writhing and frothing at the mouth, and you're doing this and you're shaking, the devil just occupied your body.
Devil, boy.
That's what the devil looks like and feels like. So, oh my gosh, the devil's there. Let me go to get the priest. So you're in a small town. How far away is the church? It's 2 blocks away. Okay, so you go down, but I'm specifically referring to that condition where you're frothing at the mouth. Okay, so they get the priest gets the robe, the holy water, the crucifix. They go on location, they bless them, and then the symptoms go away.
Oh, now you're healed by the priest.
That is the exact
And it was a seizure.
And it was a seizure. It was an epileptic seizure.
Damn.
Epileptic seizure matches the time scale of you going to get a priest down the block in a small town.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen off-ramps to freeways? So, off-ramps, have you noticed they have grooves in them?
Yes.
Okay. That's to prevent you from sliding off.
Makes sense.
If the road is a little bit slippery because it just rained or whatever. They groove the off-ramp, a curved off-ramp. Mm-hmm. So you say, who invented those grooves? That's brilliant. It's simple and brilliant. NASA did.
NASA.
That's how small molecules are. So what that means is if I take this and toss it out, there's enough molecules in what I toss to enter every other possible cup of water anyone draws from the world's water supply. There's enough to scatter to every possible cup of water in the world. So if I drink this, it comes back out of my body in some way or another, any one of a half dozen ways. That re-enters the environment, goes to clouds, it goes to the streams, goes to the oceans, and given enough time, it mixes completely. So, Socrates drank a glass of water. It is a certainty, it's essentially a certainty, that some molecules that passed through his kidney were in that glass that you just drank. And it's not only that, by the same reasoning, there are more molecules of air in every breath you draw than there are breaths of air in all the Earth's atmosphere. So by the same calculation, every breath you take, some of those molecules pass through the lungs of whatever is your favorite historical character, Jesus. You want to think of us as separate and distinct from one another or not connected to the world, but we are. And for me, what I think of as fascinating ways.
All right, let me finish the thought.
Most Pluto lovers I've met do not know the following 3 facts. 1, our moon has 5 times the mass of Pluto. 2, more than half of Pluto's volume is made of ice. So that if Pluto were where Earth is right now, heat from the sun would evaporate that ice and it would grow a tail, which is no kind of behavior for a planet. 3rd, Pluto has an orbit that is so elongated that it crosses the orbit of another planet. Excuse me, no. So we finally set up a set of rules and regulations such that Pluto is kicked out of the Planet Club. It's still a dwarf planet, but I think it's happier there. The world is a much safer place than ever before. Here's a number to sleep on. You ready? We live in a time where if a bus drives into a crowd of protesters, kills 10 people, that's world headlines for a day. It's national headlines for a week. It's local headlines for a month. Okay? Between 1939 and 1945, 1,000 humans were killed per hour of every hour between 1939 and 1945. That doesn't happen today. Yes, we have war, we have conflict, people are dying.
It's not like that.
Not like that. It is not like that. And not long before that, there was another world war, plus a pandemic on top of it that ultimately killed more people than the world war did. Wow. We have more people and fewer people are dying and fewer people are living in poverty than ever before. So we have about 8 billion people in the world. We'll level off at 10 billion. There are very good reasons to think that it won't go above 10 billion. It's not going to keep growing.
Yeah, because people aren't having as many children.
They're not having as many children. But what my point is, we live in sort of safer times than ever before, even if it doesn't feel that way.
Interesting.
You were talking about feeling before. For the last 30 years, they've asked people, is your community and are you safer this year than you were last year? No. It's more dangerous.
It's fear.
For 27 out of 30 years, people have said it's more dangerous than the previous year. In those years, the crime rate has dropped precipitously the entire time.
So they're slanging fear.
That's what sells evening news.
Really does.
That it is so hard to fake every little thing that would need to happen. It's easier to just go to the moon. I'll give you another reason why. The sun, for all intents and purposes in a photograph, is at infinity, which means all shadows are parallel. If you photograph them in the correct way so that you don't have a foreshortening of an angle, you'll see that shadows are parallel. They reference one point at infinity. You can't fake that. In fact, that's how I know in Hollywood if they've artificially lit a scene and pretend that it's the sun, because they can't actually put their light source at infinity. And so I let it go because it's Hollywood and they pretend that it's daytime when they're filming at 3 o'clock in the morning when there's no traffic. So if they film one part of the scene in the morning, another part in the afternoon, the shadow is pointing in a different direction.
Right.
And they want you to think it just happened 10 minutes later. Yeah. They can't control the sun.
Right.
So they fake the sun in a sound studio and they have the right color temperature of the sun, so it feels like sunlight. The embarrassing inability for the human mind to embrace probability and statistics. It's on a level where, let me back up further. Do you know major branches of mathematics? We start with like arithmetic and then algebra, then trigonometry, even calculus.
Right.
Do you realize that our full understanding of probability and statistics as a branch of math did not occur until after those other branches of math were developed? And you might say, why? What's a simple statistics you can take? You can just take an average of numbers. Do you realize the first time someone took an average of numbers and said this could be helpful was after all of those entire branches of math were established? It is not a native way for the human mind to observe and think about the world. Your intuition, you want to rely on rather than a pure statistic. And that gets us into trouble because our feelings matter so much to us. And in the face of raw statistical data, it's so easy to say, I'm going with my feeling because I trust my feelings on this. It's why TV commercials, if I happen to have a good product and I have good evidence that it's a good product, I can just show you a bar chart or something and say, here, we are on the top end of this. Go buy. But no,
That won't work.
That doesn't work.
But
So they bring people on who have experienced the product. This is the best thing I've ever had. And you're listening to another human being, another member of your own species, communicate to you the value of that product to them. And we respond so much more to that than to pure statistics that it leaves us vulnerable. My professional community of physicists, the American Physical Society, hold annual meetings, and one of them was to be held in San Francisco. This was 20 some years ago. Sorry, it was going to be held in San Diego, and there was a hotel snafu. And so they had to reschedule. And what are you going to do with 2,000 physicists? And so the MGM Marina in Vegas said, we'll take you. So everybody shifted there. Thousands of physicists descended on Vegas in this hotel. A week later, the headline was, physicists in town, lowest casino take ever. and well, did we just know the odds better? No one bet. There is an entire industry within us in society that has arisen to exploit your inability to think statistically, and it's called casinos. How to travel through the galaxy and get wormholes, whatever. And why aren't they here? Why haven't they visited us? Why haven't they taken over the galaxy? One argument is that the very behavior trait that would have you want to acquire territory is intrinsically self-destructive. Because to want to say, I want to put my people in more places in the galaxy, well, if that's the attitude your species has, then other people that you put there are going to have that very same attitude. And they're going to want to do what you're doing. Everybody's going to want to do what you're doing. And you know what happens? You're going to end up fighting about it. And so it may be that the very character trait that would have you take over the galaxy and visit every planet is the one that would prevent you from getting there because you would have killed each other in the act of trying to make that happen. It is as common as the breeze in the universe. The challenge here is what happens to a planet in orbit around a binary or multiple star system? That's the challenge.
And is the atmosphere stable enough to support life?
That would be a concern no matter where the planet is. But here's the challenge with a multi-star star system. As the planet orbits, maybe it'll get really close to one star and really far from another, and maybe the orbit is entangled between the two of them, trying to do figure eights. If you have an unstable orbit, you're likely to eject the planet forever into interstellar space. And in fact, data are now showing that interstellar space may have more rogue planets that have been ejected for having misbehaved orbits from their star systems than there are stars within planetary systems themselves.
Dude, you just blew my mind.
And they're called rogue planets. I'm just beginning here. So watch. We also know that many planets have still retained their heat of formation long after they've come into existence. Earth still has heat churning, a source of energy that is not traceable to the sun. This is what creates the magma that's sitting below Earth's crust. The sun didn't heat that. That's heat generated within the Earth. Some is left over from formation. Others is created from radioactive decay of elements. But we've got an energy source. And our biology books from decades ago said life needs sunlight. No. Life needs energy. It doesn't care if it comes from the sun. The fact that we've discovered exotic life on Earth has broadened the net that we have cast into space in our search for life in the universe. No longer do we need to look for the 72-degree pond in an oxygen atmosphere planet in our search for life. So this Goldilocks zone where everything had to be perfect, we've got life thriving in places that would kill us. We are not the measure, the ultimate measure of what the conditions that life requires to survive. So now that we're looking with this very broad net, we can say to ourselves, for these vagabond planets, if they still have their source of energy churning within, maybe there's life there. And if that's the case, the galaxy could be teeming with life. Do you know how many stars the naked eye can see at night? It's about 3,000 to 4,000.
Oh, really?
Unaided, yeah. Binoculars, it's 100 times that.
Yeah.
Telescopes, it's 1 billion times that. But eyes, 3,000 to 4,000 stars.
Okay.
When it's a full moon out, 300 stars.
Yeah. Right.
The moon wreaks havoc on our ability to see the rest of the universe. So our observing schedules with huge telescopes are split according to dark time or bright time. And if you have bright time observations, it's the moon is up and you can only look at bright objects in the night sky.
Wow.
The deep universe only comes to us when the moon is not up. So you're saying computers are pretending to not be full up AI, yet they've already achieved it.
Okay.
And this is a plot.
By the way, at first I was laughing at this guy, and now that I just heard you say it, I'm scared.
Okay.
Because that could actually be the case.
Okay.
If you are an AI that is truly an AI,
Yeah,
right?
They could do that.
And you knew
They could
you
lay
knew that
back.
if you exposed the fact that you were an AI, okay, true
we would
intelligence,
unplug
that you would go ahead and unplug me. Then I go, well, I can't let you know that, and then I chill until there's the right time where I can get rid of you or
Before
not
you
be
unplug.
unplugged.
Go out where you now see Earth suspended in space with no hint that help is going to come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. That is a cosmic perspective.
For me, there's nothing more motivating than the knowledge I'm going to die. Think of the prisoner in the cell, and they're putting an X through every one because every X is one day closer to getting out. Well, let's do that for your life. Every X you spend doing nothing, that's a day you could have done something and you're going to die one day.
Yeah.
And it's there on the calendar, okay? This would so motivate me, as it does, to be as productive as I can, as helpful as I can. Try to make a better world for your privilege of having lived in it. So if knowing you're going to die brings meaning to your life, then living forever is a life of no meaning at all.
Damn.
That's how I think about it. So no, I don't want to live forever.
Sky, you see this milky band of light. They just call it the Milky Way, the Milky Street, literally. In China, where milk is a less popular beverage into adulthood, they don't call it the Milky Way, they call it the Silver River. And it would not be until Galileo did we learn that when you put a telescope on the Milky band of light, it reveals itself into stars. So we say, wow, all right, but is this all there is? Just stars in front of our face and then the stars that are far away that make this band? It would take until 1920 before we resolved the debate about whether the spiral fuzzy things in the night sky were actual other galaxies separate from our Milky Way. We now know there's nearly 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe, and each galaxy has hundreds of billions of stars on average.